Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Press Start. I am one of your hosts, David.
And I'm Eric.
And we are here to give you some news. So the lowdown on some news. At the top of this episode, I do want to say I did see a headline saying that Shelley Duvall, the actress who was in The Shining, she unfortunately passed away at the age of 75. So rest in peace to Shelley Duvall.
Yes, rip.
My only experience with The Shining was I was flipping through the channels like maybe 15 years ago, and I saw it on like Spike TV or something like that. It was like one of the scenes where she was like, what's his Jack Nicholson's character wasn't his name Jack?
I believe so, or maybe it was John. It's been a long time since I've seen the movie.
She was like crying because he was like going crazy, I think, trying to kill her with the axe, going up the stairs and saying all sorts of stuff. And I wasn't sure what I was watching. I thought it was a joke, if I'm being honest. I thought it was like maybe like a black comedy kind of, but like I just wasn't sure what I was watching. And it felt very unsettling, which I know that that's The Shining's purpose. It's multiple purposes, but I just wasn't sure of what was going on. And I was like, I don't know if I can take this seriously, but I know that millions of people love The Shining and they love Stanley Kubrick. Well, I don't want to say that. I feel like his movies are very polarizing, but again, also I've never seen any of them, even though they are. Eric, do you have more experience watching Kubrick films?
I can't think of any other movies he's made off the top of my head.
He's made Clockwork Orange. He's made The Shining, and then didn't he do 2001: A Space Odyssey? Or am I?
That does sound familiar. Yeah, I mean, I've seen parts of Clockwork Orange. I'm not really a big fan of that story. I do like 2001 Space Odyssey, although it is I would say it's a movie that's not very rewatchable, if that makes sense. Just because of how long and drawn out it is. And even with The Shining, to be honest, this might be like horror heresy or something. I don't think it's really that scary, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think it's sometimes a little bit boring. Maybe that's just me. But I feel like there's a lot of other horror movies made around the time of The Shining that are a lot better. Certainly there's a lot of iconic scenes.
Definitely.
Everything in The Shining, and the setting alone too is interesting. I just feel like, I don't know. It's just a very dry movie to me, if that makes sense.
Maybe it's more psychological horror than anything, because isn't the whole premise, not to go off on a Shining rant, which I'm about to slightly do, but isn't the whole premise where he takes his family to the woods because he's having writer's block, and then he just slowly goes insane?
Well, the premise is he was basically got a job to watch the hotel through the winter, like during its off season. And while they're working there, he's writing for his book, and he is having writer's block. And he's also alcoholic, trying to get out of that. And then basically the mansion is more or less cursed, not like literally cursed, but it's just that everyone who ends up running the mansion during its off season ends up either killing their family or killing themselves. And that's what happens to the main character in The Shining. So yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, I was a bit off, but okay, yeah. So that's The Shining, everyone. Anyway, so in gaming news, Nintendo Life reports that Nintendo has dropped a really creepy trailer for a new horror project. It's titled Emio. and on Nintendo Life, it shows a picture of a man in like a blurry background, but he has a paper bag over his face with a really creepy wide smile. And I suppose looks like reading Nintendo Life's article, it says, moving away from the family-friendly image we're so used to seeing associated with Nintendo's products, Emio will include strong themes, violence, and suicide references, and is rated MA 15 plus, according to Australia's classification board.
But they haven't said what kind of genre of game this is, like if it's first person, third person,
they
what have you.
They haven't. It's really just a small teaser. Where it's small. So Nintendo Life says the original announcement has a hashtag "Who is Emio" attached to it, and then the official trailer's ending features some Japanese text which roughly translates to "Smiling Man." But I don't believe that there's any indication about what type of video game this or project this is going to be. Like you said, first person, third person, bird's eye view, or anything like that. But we just know that they're planning something, and it's going to be creepy and a bit left. Nintendo's already left field from the gaming industry, but in terms of their own wheelhouse, like the article says, departing from their family-friendly image and presenting something with more mature themes.
I mean, it is kind of surprising to see Nintendo announce a full-on mature horror game, because as far as I'm aware, I can't really think of any M-rated like first party Nintendo horror games.
Neither can I.
I mean, there's been some horror adjacent games Nintendo's made, like maybe Luigi's Mansion, I guess you can say. Probably more Metroid, I guess, could be considered somewhat horror.
Yeah,
but it's just they're taking a chance, because Nintendo is definitely the most family-friendly video game company out there.
100%. Out of all of the video game companies, you think when you say Nintendo, the first thing that comes to your mind is not horror. It's Mario. It's Zelda. All the family-friendly games.
Did they say this is going to be a Switch release too, right?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay, because it'll be interesting if that's used as a sort of launch title for the Switch 2 or whatever they're going to call it. Because if it is a launch title, maybe that could be setting the tone for what kind of games Nintendo wants to make as a first-party developer.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I don't think that they're not going to just totally pivot and left field start to appeal to a different audience. I definitely think that they're going to do their own thing, which is what they've done best. But if they switch it up, if they switch it up a little bit and provide this new experience, I think that can definitely bring in a new audience into Nintendo's gaming family.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what makes of it. I mean, I'm more of a horror video game and movie guy myself, so I'm always interested to see new takes on the genre. So
yeah, new takes are always refreshing. I am definitely not a horror fan, but this does seem interesting. And I know, in terms of speaking of horror, I'm pretty sure that yes, I'm looking at it right now. The Resident Evil games are on Nintendo Switch as well, and I've heard wonderful things about particularly Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
And Resident Evil 4 is on Nintendo Switch, and I've been meaning to check it out. I definitely have.
Well, I mean, Resident Evil 4 has a long history with Nintendo, because it originally launched for the GameCube back in the day.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Actually, I'm saying like I knew that, but I don't think I really knew that.
Yeah, it was a pretty interesting take, because usually Resident Evil back then was considered a PlayStation game, so it was pretty surprising that it launched on the GameCube, especially given Nintendo's more family friendly nature.
Yes.
And I think Resident Evil 4 was one of the most highest selling games on the GameCube. And of course, eventually Resident Evil 4 would be ported to everything under the sun
Yeah.
afterwards. But yeah, it's maybe, I guess Nintendo's trying to reconnect to those GameCube days, I guess, with this new game.
Maybe we'll have to see. All right, and Eric, what did you have to bring to the show today?
Well, keeping the train with, I guess, our horror theme so far in this episode, there's been rumors of 2 new Friday the 13th video games in development. They probably won't be releasing this year, and these are unconfirmed rumors. Okay. But according to the insider Cinestealth, there are 2 games being in development, which is one is being a Friday the 13th multiplayer game, and another is a probably single player, more linear focused gameplay wise Friday the 13th game. Now, as I said, these are just rumors. Nothing's been confirmed. No developers have been announced who are making these games. There's no release window. But it's pretty interesting because a few months ago, the company Horror Inc., which is the current co-owner of Friday the 13th, announced that they're going to be working on multiple, or they're going to be announcing multiple Friday the 13th projects later this year. As part of the new Jason Universe initiative. Okay. So far this year, they've announced Jason Voorhees coming to the Warner Brothers themed multiverses fighting game. And they've also announced a 4K re-release of the 2009 Friday the 13th remake movie. Okay. And they did say that they were going to be announcing some games. So these 2 games announcements could have some credence. We'll just have to wait to see what if these rumors turn out to be true. I'm personally interested in seeing this. Friday the 13th is one of my favorite horror movie series. It's kind of the series that really got me into horror overall. Like I've even met Kane Hodder, who is best known for playing Jason Voorhees the most in most of the 12 Friday the 13th movies that are out there. But yeah, so it's pretty interesting. It's also interesting because the multiplayer game is interesting because Friday the 13th's probably most prolific and famous video game was Illphonic's Friday the 13th, the game, which was a asymmetrical multiplayer game, similar to Dead by Daylight, if you know that game.
Yeah, are you talking about the one that I feel like it came out a few years ago, but maybe it was a little bit more than a few years ago? You know what I'm talking about, right?
The Friday the 13th game?
Yeah, I think that's the one that you're literally talking about. Isn't that the one that they just discontinued service for? Yeah,
they did actually shut down the servers for it this past winter.
Yes.
Because of licensing issues. And yeah, that game was pretty fun. Because that game basically had most of the players play as campers, and one player would play as Jason. And the objective for Jason was to kill all the campers, while the campers had to run around the campsites, look for materials, and try and escape the camp. Or if they're able to, try and kill Jason, although that was incredibly hard to do.
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting that a multiplayer game is announced. Some fans are hoping that this multiplayer game will be a sequel, or at least a spiritual successor to the Friday the 13th video game from 2017. And in terms of a linear game, that one I think could do pretty well. I've actually wrote an article about it for Game Rant. And I suggested that the game could play more like some of the best linear horror games, such as Alien Isolation or Outlast. I don't know if you played those games.
I have not. I've only seen one Alien movie.
Well, they're both incredibly scary games, especially Outlast, I would say. But I feel in those games, it's a first-person setting where you basically have to hide and kind of like solve puzzles or do some slight combat to try and get through the haunted houses, I guess you can say. Whereas like in Alien Isolation, it's a space station, and Outlast is an asylum facility. And usually it's where there's like one killer always trying to find you. In Alien, it's the alien, and Outlast, it's multiple crazed maniacs. So I think like with the linear game, if the Friday 13th linear game rumor is true, and for one, it has many options for where it could be set. It could be set around or during any of the 12 Friday the 13th movies. It could be a sequel to those movies. It can be an original story. But I think the best way to utilize it, especially not to anger fans, I think this game could be used as a sort of prequel to Friday the 13th, or I should say Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday, which is Friday the 13th Part 9. Because in Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. These probably sound really weird titles to you. But in the end of that movie, Jason gets destroyed by toxic Manhattan waste. But then in the beginning of Jason Goes to Hell, he just reappears like fully formed. So I think like this linear game could be used to kind of explain how he got his old body back. At least that's my pitch. But yeah, I'm kind of hopeful these games are true, because there hasn't been a lot of good Friday the 13th games besides the previously mentioned one from 2017. There's only been like 2 old NES games, or NES and a computer game released in the 80s, and then like a more child-friendly, oddly enough, puzzle game released on the App Store a few years ago. So it'll be good to see Jason finally get his due in a truly good and terrifying horror game. So.
Yeah. Wow, that sounds really exciting. I will not be checking that out when it comes out, personally. But that is just me. So then the thing that I wanted to bring to the show is a little bit more Dragon Ball Z news. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, which came out a few years ago. Is the game, it's touted as being like a true RPG experience where you can play through each of the sagas, starting from the Sand Saga, continuing all the way to the end of the Boo Saga, and even past that, where they had DLC going into the super content where you fight Beerus and you can train with Whis and all that. Those are the newer characters that were introduced a few years ago for Dragon Ball Super, and then it even goes past that with Frieza being resurrected for Resurrection F, and I believe it goes there's more. There's a lot of DLC for Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. That game has been very supported within the last couple of years, thankfully, because it's a really great game, and. Kind of the support has slowed down for the game a bit, but recently the game, the developers put in a little mission for players if they're looking for some more content. So it's just a small side mission, and this mission, it's you play as, I believe it's Goku's son. And you're trying to help out Hercule, or Mr. Satan, in the game, and that is he's the world martial arts champion. But the funny thing about Hercule is He was introduced during the Cell Saga, and he's shown to be he's a normal human. He's not a Saiyan like in like Goku and Vegeta and Gohan. And Saiyans are this alien race of warriors, and they're now living on Earth. If you know Dragon Ball Z, you know the story. But Hercule, he's a regular human, but he's actually really strong. But the thing is he doesn't really like to. He likes to. He's very showboaty, and he's very much like, oh, I'm the one who defeated the great threat that happened, years ago and whatnot. But anyway, the side mission is Hercule. He wants Gohan to teach him how to fly and how to use how to do all the things that he's able to do innately because he's half Saiyan, half human. And because he wants to impress his daughter Videl, and Videl is Gohan's wife, and so it's kind of a comical little side story. And Hercule, his big thing, it's like, oh, I don't want to have to do the training, he likes to lie to trick his fans and stuff, and he's kind of sort of sleazy, but he has a good heart deep down, and that's shown in the Buu saga, where he actually befriends the big bad of the of that arc. But anyway, so he tells Gohan, he's like, oh, I want to skip all the training. I don't want to, have to put in any work or whatever, but I want Videl to basically think that I'm cool. And so that's the premise of the little side mission. So you have to, and it's called, I believe, Super Satan, where Hercule, he has this big afro and he has this big mustache. And if you turn Super Saiyan in the show or in the games, like in the story canonically, if you're Saiyan, then your hair typically, it becomes like this golden yellow with this aura coming all around you, and your eyes turn green, and it's really cool. For anyone's listening, if you've never watched Dragon Ball Z, I will tell you, just go look up the first time that Goku turned Super Saiyan on Namek, and it's iconic. It's an iconic scene. It's during his first fight with Frieza. But that's the premise of the little side mission. So that's a little nugget to keep people tided over for Dragon Ball Z Sparking Zero, which is the newest game that's coming out later on this year in October. And as I've said before in the show when I brought it up, very excited for it. There have been more characters announced, and I'm just counting down the months now.
So is this new side mission like a limited time thing, or is it just like updated for everyone that has the game already?
Yep, it's updated for everyone who has the game. So I have the game. I'm not quite far. I have the game. I actually restarted it, but I'm not at that point yet, but I'm sure that when I get to that point, that when missions start popping up on my screen and whatnot, that it'll be available for me. So if you already have the game, then it's not a limited kind of a thing. You can boot it up, and if you are far enough in the story, then you should see the Super Satan mission.
All right, that sounds cool. I probably won't be checking it out because, as you said, I'm one of those guys that doesn't know anything about Dragon Ball. But
it's never too late to start.
Yeah, I mean, one of these days I'll have to watch like one of the like dozens of seasons there are or something. Yeah. All right, but one of the other big news we had to talk about, there's been a lot of new changes coming to Xbox Game Pass subscriptions. Yesterday, or I should say July 10th, according to Windows Central, they announced that Xbox Game Pass is going to be having all of its prices increased or altered in some way starting this month for new subscribers and starting in September for existing subscribers. So basically, the standard tier will no longer include day one titles. For people who don't know, Xbox Game Pass is basically Xbox's new live service for playing games online, but it's also a way for people to play games in that if you have Game Pass, you can basically download any games in Xbox's library for free. And then you can just download them, play them, and if you don't want them anymore, just uninstall them. You can and install any other game that you want for free. I mean, besides paying for a standard fee. It's not like, let's say you want to play like Halo 5 and Infinite. You don't have to pay for those games individually. You can just pay for the standard Game Pass fee and play those games for free, more or less.
Okay, so what you're saying is that in order to, because I believe I had something like this when I had Xbox, where it was Xbox Gold, was that?
Yeah, that was the old system. Yeah.
Yeah. So isn't it? Yeah, you can play those games as long as you're subscribed to the service, correct?
Yeah, I believe if you for nowadays you need Xbox Game Pass in order to play online on Xbox. But I also believe if you unsubscribe, like if you go offline, that you can't play the games you downloaded anymore from Game Pass.
Yeah.
Unless you went out of your way to purchase those games and actually download them and install them on your console.
Yeah. Actually,
like you normally would for other platforms.
Now, what's the price right now, and then what are they changing it to?
So right now, there's different tiers of Xbox Game Pass. The cheapest tier was standard, or a monthly fee, basically. That one was originally $9.99 or $10 basically a month. But now that's going to be increasing to $14.99 or $15 a month.
I take that back.
In terms of the annual Game Pass, which is called the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, that's going from $50.99 or $51 to $75 a year. And then they also have a PC Game Pass for like Windows on your computer. And I believe it's connected to Steam, I think, a little bit. Or at least some Xbox games that are on Steam could be used with Game Pass in that way. PC Game Pass was originally $10, but now it's going to be increasing to $12. And that's also a monthly fee, is PC Game Pass.
Now, are there significant change, like with the price increases, like are there any significant changes that are going to be happening, or is it literally just, hey, we're increasing the prices and not changing anything?
So the biggest change that's coming out of this is that there will no longer be day one games appearing on Game Pass. Saying what that means is, for the past couple of years or so, that Game Pass has been active. Anytime a new game, unless publishers didn't allow it, most new games that debuted or released, I should say, you can play instantly for free if you're subscribing to Game Pass.
Okay.
Like, let's say back in the day, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order was released. People that had Game Pass could instantly download it for free if they were subscribed to Game Pass, and they can play through all they want within like a week or so. And if they're all done with it, they can just delete it and they don't have to actually purchase the game. But now with these changes, only people that are subscribed to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, the annual rate and the highest rate for Game Pass, will be able to download games day one. So for that change, basically, for instance, the big change that's going to affect people is like for popular games like Call of Duty, you'll have to pay the highest tier for Xbox Game Pass if you want to be able to download it for free through Game Pass day one.
Wow. I don't see how that's a positive, if I'm being honest.
It's a pretty it's not a surprising change given how inflation has affected prices everywhere these days. But for comparison, back during Xbox Gold membership days, the annual fee for Xbox Live Gold was $60 a year, whereas now Xbox Game Pass, the highest fee is $75 a year. Granted, with Xbox Live Gold, you wouldn't be able to download games for free. You would just be getting like a few monthly games that you can download for free and keep. Whereas Game Pass, you can download anything under the sun as long as it's in Xbox's library for free, but you wouldn't be able to keep them. unless you purchase them fully.
Okay.
A lot of this change seems to be showing the darker side of Game Pass for a lot of people. Xbox Game Pass, while it has been fairly profitable for Xbox, Microsoft has even gone out of their way to say it's the best way to play games, as they often do.
Yeah.
But for a lot of developers are not happy with Xbox Game Pass because it effectively steals potential sales of games.
Yeah.
If people can just download games for free without having to purchase them day one.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of people think that's a reason why a lot of games these days have also introduced microtransactions so much in order to make some kind of profit from their new games. So this is showing kind of the negative effects. Like, sure, Game Pass had a good run initially, but it seems like Xbox might have to go back towards a more Xbox Live Gold kind of membership. At least that's what I think might happen in the next few years, in my opinion. But we'll have to see. PlayStation has already started developing its own kind of Game Pass system. I forget what it's called off the top of my head, but they still have a system where you can just pay for online and you don't have to buy their version of Game Pass. I don't think Nintendo has a version of that yet. I don't think they will introduce it.
I hope that I really hope that they don't, because right now what they have is they have Nintendo Switch Online, and the big joke about Nintendo Switch Online is that, one, no one really knows when things are coming. Nintendo announces that with their subscription service that, hey, we have these games coming to Nintendo Switch Online. We don't know. We don't know when. We're just announcing them, and they'll show up when they show up. So enjoy. And they're relatively obscure titles, but. So they're relatively obscure titles, and most people will think that, hey, there's kind of a no-brainer, like you should put a lot of the Pokemon games, if not all the Pokemon games, on the Nintendo Switch Online, the ones from Game Boy and Game Boy Color. But they don't. But they just have, they have a monthly membership, which I believe it's for $3.99, or you can do $49.99 for Nintendo Switch Online expansion, which includes the games. It includes games that are on Super Nintendo, so Nintendo Entertainment System, so the NES, SNES, the SNES, and then Nintendo 64. So you get those games too. You also get, I believe, Game Boy, and Game Boy Advance games that you can play all on Switch, all for $49.99, which that to me is much better than what Game Pass is. And you don't you don't necessarily get you get obviously whatever games Nintendo has provided, but it's much different than Game Pass. So I like Nintendo's system. If I'm being well, again, I'm a little more biased. And I had Xbox Live or Xbox Gold or whatever back in the day when I had my 360. But this model, I as a consumer, I'm not the biggest fan of it. Yes, I subscribe to Nintendo services, but other than that, I just purchase my games.
Yeah, I think most people at the end of the day still purchase their games. Maybe they don't buy them day one, like pre-ordered wise. And I think that's a big issue that's affecting games as well, but that's a whole other topic. But I think these days, inflation is affecting everyone. People are struggling to purchase games and purchase anything else, really. Yeah. So having this price increased is probably going to make people upset with Xbox. But people also have to remember that for most of Xbox's existence with Microsoft, Xbox has never really generated that much of a profit for Microsoft. And I believe with the recent purchase of Activision Blizzard, Xbox and Microsoft basically lost billions of dollars worth of money by doing those purchases. So I believe this change is Microsoft trying to recuperate those lost funds.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
But it'll be interesting to see how if Xbox Game Pass changes in any way. Like I said, the big game this is going to affect is the upcoming Call of Duty Black Ops 6, which I believe is releasing later this year. And it would be interesting to see if suddenly there's a ton of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscribers just to be able to play that game day one.
Yeah.
Because this will be the first Call of Duty game released as a basically in-house Xbox Studio release. So it'll be interesting to see, because now that Xbox owns Activision, it'll be interesting to see. I imagine if sales of that game do not do well, that'll basically change all of Microsoft's plans with how they release their games, basically. So there's a lot riding on Call of Duty, as always, with these big major companies.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. I don't know. I know that interest, from what I have heard, I don't play Call of Duty anymore, but from what I've heard, and at least seen from the last release, that I think interest in the series is it's always going to be there. I don't think it personally, but this is coming from someone who I want to preface this by saying I don't know what I'm talking about. Because I'm not a Call of Duty fan. I think interest in the series might be waning, might be dipping a little bit. Do you have any insight into that?
I believe for older fans, it is kind of dipping a bit. I know their past few campaigns have not been too fruitful, to say. I know with Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, the newer version, I should say, that one was a big disappointment. There was a lot of bugs. The campaign was very short, very not as it was basically fangless, I guess you can say.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I think the developers initially revealed too that the campaign was more or less just a DLC expansion of Modern Warfare 2's campaign. So a lot of people were disappointed by that. And I know a lot of older Call of Duty fans are upset with the juxtaposition with the multiplayer, because with Call of Duty and Activision, they're trying to get a lot of the Fortnite fans to play their game. So they've been introducing a lot of weird crossovers, because for most people probably picture Call of Duty as being a somewhat realistic multiplayer shooter, whether it be set in Modern Warfare or in the wars of the past. But these days, Call of Duty, you have people playing as like Nicki Minaj or Homelander or Jigsaw from the Saw movies, running around like being like, let's go, we gotta kill those guys. And it's like, it just doesn't make any sense to include those characters in the shooting game meant to be a realistic, give or take, shooter game. So I feel like a lot of people are confused. Like, especially there's the most recent new character they announced was a shooter, an operator in Call of Duty that looks just like a chicken, and he like shoots people, and when they die, they turn into pieces of fried chicken. It's just, people are just confused on what Call of Duty is trying to be right now, basically.
Yeah, I think it's stumbling. I think because Fortnite, like that's definitely disrupted things, and that's where the money is. So I think that they're trying to definitely appeal to that audience while also trying to cater to their traditional audience as well. So I think Call of Duty might be having a little bit of an identity crisis.
It definitely is, and you can tell it's confused, because a few years ago, back during like the Xbox PlayStation 4 days, they were releasing new titles, fairly experimental titles, I guess you can say. But these days, they've been going back, either remaking games that were successful in the past with like the new Modern Warfare games, or trying to continue old series that were successful with the new Black Ops games. And anytime they make new games, they either don't do their homework and make completely like not accurate historical games, such as the much maligned Call of Duty Vanguard, or they strip options that were available in previous games but replaced now with either like payable options or just options that are gone for no reason. Just like the aforementioned Call of Duty Vanguard Zombies, which was a shell of the former Call of Duty Zombies game mode. So I feel like Call of Duty, I mean, it still is pretty much the most popular video game, at least in terms in multiplayer, in the world right now. So it's still going to be Xbox's cash cow.
Yes,
and I don't see them canceling Call of Duty anytime soon. But I do feel like they need to maybe take a year off and just kind of reorganize what they want Call of Duty to be.
Yeah.
You know.
I agree. I think taking a break would be nice. I think, regrouping and restructuring and trying to figure out where you want the series to go could be really refreshing. I think that they should honestly just kind of reboot everything.
I mean, they tried that before a few years ago, well, probably almost a decade ago now, but like with the release of Call of Duty World War II, if you remember that release.
I do.
But it seems like that one was just a response to the success of Battlefield 1, because ever since that release, besides Vanguard, I should say, there hasn't been a Call of Duty set around World War II. And there's also a lot of cultural touchstones that people are getting upset with the Call of Duty IP with. For example, I believe it was in Vanguard or it was in World War II. I don't remember, but they took out basically the Pacific Campaign representation from those games. And they also didn't show a lot of the more darker side of those events as opposed to older Call of Duty games. But I think that's just a response to the way the entertainment climate is these days. Because Call of Duty is trying to be, this hardcore, gritty warfare game, but at the same time, it's trying to get all these kids playing their game without offending parents or ESRB or any other officials. So it's kind of like Call of Duty is fighting against itself.
That's a very hard thing to do. That's definitely a difficult thing to do. That's all I'll say about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Xbox is a mystery.
Yes, it is. But that is all that I have to bring to this show this week. What about you, Eric? Is there anything else that you wanted to bring up, or should we wrap up?
So before we go, the last little topic I wanted to bring up, and this is just a rumor, so it's not confirmed, not official.
Ooh,
but there's a rumor that 2K Games, which is a game publisher, there's a rumor that while they are working on a Bioshock 4 game, there's rumors that they might be working on a complete Bioshock 1 remake in the next few years.
I rejected those answers. Instead, I chose something different. I chose the impossible. I chose rapture.
Like I said, this is a complete rumor, so there's no confirmed developer or release date yet. But it's just interesting that Bioshock 1 is getting a complete remake, because just a few years ago, it was re-released as a remastered game for the Bioshock collection on modern consoles, or past-gen consoles now. So it's interesting. I feel like that would be a good release to get new players in if they release a remake of Bioshock 1 alongside Bioshock 4. even though I'm sure the games will be not really connected at all. But it's just interesting because Bioshock 1, I believe, is over 20 years old or almost 20 years old at this point. So it is due for a remaster, and I guess or a remake, I should say, because a remaster, if people don't know, the difference between a remake and a remaster is usually just a graphical upgrade to previous games, like an HD remaster, whereas a remake is a complete bottom-up remake, graphically, gameplay, and sometimes audio-wise. But I also think there's a lot of danger in remaking Bioshock, Bioshock 1, I should say, because that's a game that a lot of people say is like one of the best games of all time. A lot of people say it's like a true piece of art. It's one of the highest rated games of all time. So if they remake it and they kind of take away parts of that vision, then it could kind of hurt the Bioshock title more than it could help.
I definitely agree, but I also think that yeah, that's true. A lot of remakes definitely have the potential to I don't want to say tarnish the original, because whatever the original is will always stand, but you're always going to have people that are going to find something to complain about, something to nitpick, something that they aren't really happy about. But I think if they're going to remake this, if they're going to remake Bioshock 1, I'm sure that they're probably going to put a lot of care and a lot of love and care into it.
I hope so, because recent remakes have been good, but there's been some weird changes. Like, for example, the recent Resident Evil remakes, I would say, have mostly been good, although the Resident Evil 3 remake was a shell compared to its original form. Basically, Resident Evil 3 remake was just a DLC of Resident Evil 2. And even with newer remakes, like such as Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster that's coming out, I know it's called a remaster, but it's more of a remake than a remaster. It's confusing, but it's Capcom. But even with that game, everything looks to be doing good with that game, but then there's just one little thing that makes it weird. And in Dead Rising's case, it's that they didn't bring back the original voice actor for their protagonist, Trank West. So even though the game might look and play incredibly amazing and incredibly accurate to how the first game felt, it'll always feel weird to play it without that same original voice actor. So those are the kinds of chances people have to take with remaking or remastering games.
Yeah, that's the bummer. That's the bummer with it. Yeah. So the only other remake, no, it was a remake that comes to my mind that nailed the landing, that I haven't played yet, but is Nintendo released. They re-released Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door for Switch. That is by far regarded as like the best Paper Mario in the series. So they remade it, and it looks beautiful. They have a couple of quality of life improvements, and they have some they have quality of life improvements. They have one of the characters was in the Japanese translation of the game, or canonically they're a trans character, and that wasn't brought over in the Western release when when it was released in 2003, 2004. Maybe 2005. I don't remember when the game was actually released, but it was released on GameCube originally, and that translation that didn't come over to the West, but they made it canonical in the re-release on Switch, which is also cool, and everyone's been praising it. So that's the only re-release that, or remaster? No.
Remake.
There we go. I couldn't think of the word.
Yeah.
That's the only remake that, from what I can think of in very recent memory, that has stuck the landing.
I mean, for me, the best remake that comes to mind recently is the Dead Space remake.
Yes.
Because that game, it was completely rebuilt from the ground up. but it was made by people that just love the series, and it was basically an incredible one-to-one upgrade of the game and its setting and its gameplay and its story from the original, while also making visuals incredibly realistic, and also adding a lot of things from other games. I think that's a benefit of remakes, is they can also add things, like you mentioned with Paper Mario, add things that are taken away from other versions, or adding stuff that could hint to sequels. Like, for example, in the Dead Rising or Dead Space remake, they added hints to other games in the series, such as text that reference the spin-off Dead Space Extraction, and also audio from Dead Space 2, which was in Dead Space 2 canonically supposed to appear during the events of Dead Space 1. And they also brought back the original voice actor who played the protagonist, Isaac Clarke, for the remake. They didn't bring back any of the other actors, but it was good to see that they at least brought back the voice actor for the protagonist.
Yeah.
And that's what I would consider to be a perfect remake. But there's like we both said, there are dangers to remakes. It could maybe hurt players' attention. I mean, most people, like with going back to Resident Evil, most people would still say that the original Resident Evil 3 is way better than the remake of Resident Evil 3. Just because of the way the gameplay and the story was taught. Like, sure, Resident Evil 3 remake looks incredible, but it's basically a totally different game than what the original Resident Evil 3 was supposed to be. And that's the danger that 2K will have to handle if they do decide to remake Bioshock 1.
Yeah. Yeah, well, if that rumor turns out to be true, I will be excited to see it. I played Bioshock Infinite. I liked what I played of that game, and I know that they have the collection on Switch, which I should pick up. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what they do if that comes to fruition.
Yeah, I'll probably play it just to see.
Nice. Well, that's all I have for this week.
Yeah, that's all I have to say, too. A pretty light week in terms of news, lots of rumors. But it'll be interesting to see as we get closer to August with Gamescom coming up.
Yeah, and we have a bunch of new games that are coming out in August as well. So when those release, we can talk about them. So, all right, thank you for listening, and this has been Press Start. We will see you guys next week.
See you guys later.
All right, bye.